So, what do you think?
Just like heaven, The Last of Us Episode 7 once again expertly adapts the game, bringing a new perspective to a familiar scenario: how Ellie got infected in the first place. The show takes on the game's Left Behind DLC, and if you haven't played that, you're gonna want to check this out. Directed by Liza Johnson, Left Behind flashes us back to a time before Ellie even knew Joel, telling a sweet but tragic story of what wound up being one of the best and worst days of her life. And look, there's lots that the show gets right about the DLC, but there's also some things that it does pretty differently, and we're gonna break all of that down. But before we do, I have to warn you, we are about to spoil all of this, so if you haven't seen the show and haven't played the games, or if you just don't want to know what's going on, what are you doing here? Go to the mall or something, get out of here.
This is so cool! Backwards. Forwards.
Alright, getting right to it. Episode 7 is almost entirely a flashback episode following Ellie and her best friend Riley as they slip the Fedra perimeter and go have some innocent fun at the mall, with a little bit of whiskey on the side. And they have a good time. It's the best day ever, but as fans of the game know all too well, it's also the worst day ever because the cordyceps brain infection claims yet another victim. But the key here is how closely the HBO series stays to the source material. In this case, the mostly standalone Left Behind DLC expansion, adding some new wrinkles to a story that most of us have already heard, ripping our hearts out all over again. That said, not everything is exactly the same as it's presented in the show. There's some pretty big differences, and we're gonna break them all out in this video, so stick with us. So starting at the beginning, the episode opens in an abandoned house where Ellie was able to drag Joel after the final moments of last week's installment. In case you forgot, he took the business end of a broken baseball bat squarely in the midriff and then fell off a horse. Unsurprisingly, Ellie works frantically to save him because if he dies, she is up shit creek with really not even a canoe.
Leave.
Joel isn't really making things easier by trying to convince Ellie to carry on without him and just leave him there for dead. Again, that's not really a viable plan, at least not for Ellie. I guess it's kind of a viable plan for Joel. Anyway, he shoves her off, and after she puts a coat over him to keep him maybe not warm, but less cold, they share a wordless moment and she heads upstairs. As she opens the door to the rest of the abandoned house, we begin the flashback. Ellie is back in Fedra school, doing laps in gym, which is a reference to her doing military drills in the game, and having some squabbles with another girl in her class, as one does during PE. The girl's name is Bethany, and she makes a crack about Ellie's friend and promptly catches some hands, which lands Ellie in the principal's office with a black eye. But it's not the principal's office the way we remember it. This principal is a Fedra man, Captain Kwong. Clearly, this is a you should see the other guy kind of situation because Kwong tells Ellie that Bethany is in the infirmary with 15 stitches. Ellie's like, who cares? Throw me in the hole if you want. But Captain Kwong says that he's already tried that 3 times and it doesn't work, so this time he's gonna try something different.
Can't see where this is going? Let me help you out. 2 paths ahead of you.
Ellie can A, stay on the path that she's on, getting crappy jobs and eating crappy food as she blends in with the rest of the crappy survivors that Fedra exerts its crappy authority over until she dies one way or the other. Or B, Ellie can smarten up and realize that she could follow the rules and become a Fedra officer like him, which would at the very least offer Ellie a better life than the one that she's currently living. I mean, in the flashback, you get the idea. Pausing real quick for an Easter egg, when Captain Kwong tosses his keychain on the table, he's got what appears to be a Naughty Dog branded USB keyring. Naughty Dog is of course the game studio that developed The Last of Us video games, and it's kind of weird that it's made its way to Boston when Naughty Dog is based out of LA. So maybe it was swag from PAX East or a preview event. If Outbreak Day happened back in 2003, odds are that this thumb drive had some low-res Jack 2 screenshots on it at some point because that came out in the fall of 2003. Maybe we're reading into this too much. Back to the convo, Fedra officers live better, and best of all, they can tell the Bethanys of the world what to do, and that seems to be the thing that gets through to Ellie, but she's got a question for the captain.
Why do you even care?
I care because no matter what anyone out there says or thinks, we're the only thing holding this all together.
At this point, Ellie doesn't really know what's outside the Fedra walls, as her epic road trip with Joel is still in the not too distant future, but just based on the Kansas City situation where Fedra fell and Kathleen's resistance rose in its place, Captain Kwong isn't wrong about this. As for Ellie's choice, she chooses the keys / following the rules / Fedra command route, and Captain Kwong reluctantly gives her Walkman back and she heads back to class. Next we see Ellie, she's in a room reading that Savage Starlight comic that she enjoys so much. That's only one of the handful of Easter eggs in here. Along with the comic book, we also have the no pun intended joke book, and on the walls are posters for Mortal Kombat 2. This is a throwback to the Mortal Kombat arcade cabinet that we saw in episode 3, but it also sets up another moment later in this episode. Some other Easter eggs here. We got a poster for the Val Kilmer movie Red Planet, which came out in 2000, which is pretty on brand since Ellie dreams of being an astronaut, and there's one for the 1987 Martin Shore-helmed sci-fi comedy Inner Space. Not really sure what the connection is there. There's a Dropkick Murphys poster, though their hit Shipping Up to Boston wouldn't come out until 2005, so sadly, in this timeline, the world never got to hear it. We also see a drawing of a giraffe, which is notable to those familiar with Ellie's future. We also got some images of dinosaurs and rocket ships, and that's kind of setting some stuff up for the future. Flashbacks in The Last of Us Part 2 reveal that Joel took Ellie to a space museum and a natural history museum, and here in her room we see evidence of her already being interested in that kind of stuff. She's also interested in music, and on her desk we see some cassette tapes. You kids at home could Google that bit of obsolete technology made relevant here by the fungus zombie apocalypse. The tape is an album by 80s pop group a-ha. In The Last of Us Part 2, Ellie sings Take On Me to her girlfriend Dina. It's also an 80s song, which this series has established means that danger lurks ahead, which is definitely true in this case. There's also a tape of Etta James, which we'll play later on in the episode. Anyway, it's time for lights out for Ellie, so she decides to follow the rules, at least until her friend Riley pulls a Spider-Man and crawls in through the fire escape. Riley is Ellie's best friend and secret love interest, which was all established in the Left Behind DLC. There's a quick scuffle and Ellie pulls out her switchblade as she doesn't know who this is climbing through her window, and as soon as she figures it out, she lets up.
What the f is wrong with you sneaking up on me like that?
It was a joke, okay? I thought it would work better. In my mind, you loved it.
Ellie says that Riley's been gone for 3 weeks and she thought she was dead, which is a little bit different from the game where Riley had been gone for 46 days. That seems like kind of an arbitrary thing to change, but maybe there's good reasoning behind it. This is what Bethany was giving her out in gym class earlier. Riley says that she's good, she just ran away a little bit, that's all. Ellie would have preferred to have been looped in on this plan and asks where she went.
I joined the Fireflies.
Oh, f you.
Once again, the Fireflies are an organized group of insurgents resisting Fedra control of, well, basically everything. That means that Riley should not be here in Ellie's room right now. Plus, it's past lights out and they're breaking the oh, good God, Riley's strapped. Ellie freaks out a little bit and Riley's like, shut up, I'll explain, but first, let's blow this stupid popsicle stand. Come escape with me for a little while and have the best night of your life. Heck of a thing to say to someone who just promised to start flying the straight and narrow to the Fedra captain a little while ago. And Ellie puts up a valiant defense at first, but come on, we all know where this is going. She eventually relents and the two peace out down the fire escape despite the fact that all of this is very much against the rules. They might get in trouble. While sneaking around the alleyways of the city, Riley asks what the thing with Bethany was all about, and Ellie dodges the question but doesn't hesitate to proudly mention that she gave her 15 stitches about it.
She had to get 15 stitches.
Maybe you shouldn't mess with people like that.
I'm sorry, are you telling me not to beat people up? You put Carol in the infirmary for a week.
They climb through a window and make their way up a bunch of stairs, and they come across a dead guy in a hallway, which is just super chill, regular Friday night type of stuff, especially when Riley mentions that he wasn't there the day before, which is deeply unsettling. But he hadn't finished his bottle of whiskey that he was using to wash down some pills, so that means free whiskey for Ellie and Riley, and now we know where Ellie tried whiskey before. Real quick, those pills this guy has look a lot like the ones that Joel was trading with the guard back in episode 1. Could Joel have given those pills to this guy, or is this just how pills look at the end of the world? And seeing as this guy is dead as hell, does it really even matter? Whatever, this is another change to the way this all works out compared to the game, where Riley finds the whiskey in a tent that belonged to a friend named Winston who died while he was out riding his horse Princess, neither of whom are in the game unless Winston and Princess get their own dedicated flashback episode later on, a la Bill and Frank. Fingers crossed for that one, you can never have too much horsing around. The dead guy falls to the floor because this building is not structurally sound, but that doesn't stop Riley and Ellie from making their way to the roof to try some of that whiskey, which they think is gross. Ellie asks if that was the first dead body that Riley ever saw.
No. My parents.
Ellie apologizes, she knew that, but also she asks if she can see Riley's gun. Riley says no at first, but then she says okay, and Ellie innocently checks it out. Ellie asks if Riley started dating a Firefly dude or just decided to be a terrorist or whatever, but Riley tells her the real story. She snuck out once while Ellie was stuck in the hole being punished, and while on her way to sneak back into the Fedra compound, she was stopped and recruited by an older woman who we know from the game is Marlene.
And she asked what I thought about Fedra. So I told her the truth.
Fedra are the fascist dickbags who should be getting hung for their crimes. No, that's her words, not mine. I didn't paraphrase that at all. Anyway, that served as the moment for Marlene to offer Riley membership in the Fireflies, and so Riley said yes, and just like that, she is now a terrorist / insurgent / revolutionary who is presently pounding shots and playing with a gun on a roof. To be a teenager again. What follows is a short exchanging of ideas. Riley does want to see Fedra held accountable and sees the Fireflies as a way to accomplish this, and Ellie responds by regurgitating what Captain Kwong told her, that Fedra, fascist dickbags or not, are really the ones holding everything together. Riley does the smart thing and cuts off the discussion before it becomes an argument. They're on a mission, she says, and she leads Ellie on a little light parkour across the rooftops to where they are really headed, the mall. Specifically, it's the Liberty Garden Mall, just like it is in the game. As they catch their breath, they continue their discussion, with Riley taking the side of the Fireflies, or rather the anti-Fedra stance, while Ellie still seems affected by the captain's speech from earlier. She accuses the Fireflies of bombing civilians, and once again, Riley uses the evening's mission to interrupt the proceedings because they have made it to their destination.
The mall? You out of your They sealed that place off for a reason. It's full of infected.
Oh, Ellie, how right you are. Just like Captain Kwong said earlier in the episode, Ellie is so smart, she's stupid.
If it's sealed off, then why isn't it sealed off?
This completely illogical statement is more than enough to sway Ellie's very valid concern that there might be infected in there. In 1978, George Romero examined the shopping mall through the lens of a zombie apocalypse in the classic Dawn of the Dead, with the shambling undead zombies making an obscene mockery of what mall culture was like at the time. Fast forward to now, and literally everything about this is different. The zombies aren't even really zombies anymore. The cordyceps infection is way more scary, the apocalypse looks different, and even more bleak, and our relationships to malls are completely different too. In The Last of Us, the mall is presented as a ruin, a relic of a bygone era, but hey, it's something to do when you're bored in the apocalypse. So when Riley powers up the mall lights, it's a nice moment, though again, Ellie's like, these lights are definitely going to attract somebody or something, and Riley's like, no way, it's totally fine. She promises to show Ellie the 4 wonders of the mall, and they head off to explore. Aha's Take On Me plays as they check out the mall, and that's an 80s song, and that means there's danger according to the code that Frank established. What I would like to know is, why are those escalators still functioning at the end of the world? I go to any mall right now, and one of those is going to be temporarily stairs. Rest in peace, Mitch Hedberg, but you know what I'm saying.
I like an escalator, man, because an escalator can never break. It can only become stairs.
Another Easter egg here, you can see a Dawn of the Wolf 2 poster while they're in the mall. You can find these in the game as well. Dawn of the Wolf is basically the Twilight of the Last of Us universe, and at one point, Joel mentions that he watched this one with Sarah just before the outbreak, so that has to be different here. The poster says Dawn of the Wolf 2 is coming soon, so if Joel saw it, did he see like a sneak preview or something? Or did the poster just get left up way too long? It's probably the latter. There's a movie theater near the IGN studio that still has a poster up for that last Fantastic Beasts movie, and that came out like last April. Ellie asks why some shops are empty and others aren't, and Riley explains that the stuff that's gone is what people needed the most when the outbreak happened. Well, kind of.
Sneakers. And not soap.
After an awkward moment in front of the Victoria's Secret shop, Riley takes Ellie's hand and has her close her eyes for the next surprise, which is a carousel, and it's lovely. It's all lit up, and the best part, there's nobody else on it. Riley flips the thing on, and a toy piano version of Just Like Heaven by The Cure plays as the carousel spins. When did that song come out? Oh, it was 1987. Yet again, danger awaits. But at least for now, Ellie and Riley are having fun, and the song seems innocent enough. Ellie accuses Riley of being drunk, and she's like, nah, this is just nice. It's just 2 kids on a date at the mall. You take away the apocalypse part, and it's the most normal, wholesome thing in the world. Also minus the whiskey and firearms. That said, they do break out the whiskey bottle and swig away while riding this ghostly carousel with nobody else around, and then the ride breaks down and Ellie brings up the bigger debate once again. Does Riley really think that she and the Fireflies are going to liberate everybody? Ellie makes her final pitch, encouraging Riley to come back to the QZ and work towards becoming Fedra Command, but Riley's like, that's not an option for me, I'm almost 17, that's when they assign you to do stuff, and I got assigned to sewage detail.
Standing guard while people shovel shit. That's what they think of me.
Riley explains that she panicked and she ran away, and finally Ellie seems to kind of understand. Riley tells Ellie that she was the one thing she missed being out of the QC, and that's nice. Ellie likes that.
You know, you're the one thing I miss from that place. If that makes a difference.
They find a little photo booth, which again, surprisingly still works and still takes your money, and Riley reveals that she saved up $5 to do it, which seems really steep, even for now. Whatever, they take the pictures and Riley gives them to Ellie as a keepsake, and you know what? The poses in each picture are exactly the same as they are in the game because this show has good attention to detail. Riley takes Ellie to the last surprise on her list, the arcade, specifically Raj's arcade, another detail ported straight from the game.
This is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen.
Riley's busted into the ATM and coin machine, so they have unlimited quarters, and that means that they can do what any sane person would do and play Mortal Kombat 2 at the arcade. Easter egg time. Before they play Mortal Kombat, Ellie pretends to play Daytona USA, which is a substitute for when she fakes playing Jak X Combat Racing in the Left Behind DLC. Jak X is another game made by The Last of Us developer Naughty Dog, and it's also shown in The Last of Us Part 2. And since we work for IGN, we have to list the other game cabinets we see here. We got Final Fight, Tetris, Joust, Frogger, and...
That man is playing Galaga. Thought we wouldn't notice.
Thanks, Tony, but you're dead. Go back to being dead. Also, wrong universe. Anyway, Riley gives the best advice ever and tells Ellie to just mash the buttons, which of course means Ellie gets her ass kicked. Ellie plays as Raiden and Riley plays as Melina, and she busts out a fatality to end it. Ellie cleverly deduces that Riley has definitely played this before, which is totally true, and as they're playing another round, having fun and not worrying at all about who hears what, they wake up an infected guy who is buried deep in the mall, and he's been there so long that the cordyceps have grown directly into the wall. The girls keep playing, oblivious to their impending doom, and maybe it's because Riley is wiping Ellie out at Mortal Kombat, but before you know it, it's time for the next thing. Ellie attempts to do the good kid thing and bail out early so she doesn't get caught and get in more trouble, and Riley's like, I got you a present, so of course, Ellie hangs out. She's got a few hours left, and as long as she doesn't get bitten by somebody infected by a devastating brain virus / fungus hybrid, I'm sure she'll be totally fine. Riley leads her through the food court, and real quick we have to notice that there is a Thai Express in this mall. This is a Canadian chain that didn't actually launch in the US until 2017, so not sure how it's here when the outbreak happened in 2003, but once again we are reading into this too much, but that's what we do here. Riley leads Ellie into the kitchen of a Macho Nacho where she's been sleeping most nights, which is kind of weird, and she pulls out a nice Easter egg, which is the copy of No Pun Intended that Ellie reads from throughout the series. And this is the main reason why the book is so important to her. It's the same as in the game, but the difference is this moment takes place on the carousel instead of in the back of a nacho restaurant. It's a nice touching moment that gets interrupted when Ellie finds Riley's stash of homemade pipe bombs.
Did you make these?
Ellie's like, you didn't just find this mall, they posted you here, and this is your stash of weapons. Real quick, in the games, pipe bombs aren't introduced until The Last of Us Part 2, where they're used by Abby, so presumably it's a Firefly terrorist insurgent kind of thing. Anyway, Riley says that she'd never let the Fireflies attack civilians, and Ellie is like, they're not gonna listen to you, and she's right. Ellie gets upset and is about to bounce, but Riley tells her that she's leaving, like leaving the QZ. The Fireflies are shipping her out to a new post at the QZ in Atlanta, so this night at the mall is her last hurrah and her last chance to say goodbye to Ellie. Riley asked if Ellie could come with her, but the Firefly leader Marlene said no.
This isn't easy, Ellie.
It actually is. You just did it. Goodbye.
If this episode is at all patterned like the mall-centric rom-coms of the 1980s, this is the part where the couple reaches a fork in the road and splits up before they inevitably come back together in the third act. Ellie's upset, Riley's heartbroken, and the two look as if they're gonna go their separate ways, but before Ellie leaves, she relents. She turns back to go find her friend. We know that infected guy is lurking around here somewhere, so it's really not appreciated when they throw a cheap jump scare at us with a little graveyard ghoul like you'd find in a Spirit Halloween store or a Walgreens, which could actually be a reference to the Skullseer Magic 8-Ball thing from the game. It actually is kind of a Spirit Halloween store like that, and that was Riley's final surprise. The horror shop, which is called Spooky Town, just like in the game. And that's where Ellie finds her. She's like, give me the pun book, and Riley does, and Ellie lays it all out. She thought that Riley was dead, but she wasn't, and she comes back from the dead and takes Ellie on this amazing night, and then tells her that she's gonna leave again, which is just kind of bad friending. Riley explains that she had a family once, and she wants that again, and that's part of what's so attractive about the Fireflies.
Maybe the Fireflies aren't what I think they are, but they chose me. I matter to them.
So they put on Halloween masks and have a little dance party. There's only two masks in the show. There's the werewolf and the evil clown, which is, kind of redundant. But in the Left Behind DLC, this sequence also features some other masks, like the triple Phoenix Pigeon mask, a Frankenstein's monster, a Dracula, and a blue teddy bear, which isn't really that scary. Okay, it's kind of scary. Triple Phoenix, by the way, is also an arcade game that features in the arcade in the DLC. Also worth mentioning, in the game, Riley and Ellie hit the Halloween store first when they initially break into the mall, and here in the series, it's the last thing they do as uninfected people. Anyway, it's all very fun and cute and innocent, and it culminates in a tender kiss between Riley and Ellie, finally admitting to each other what they wouldn't say out loud throughout the episode. This happens a little bit differently in the game right after a water gun fight, which was sadly cut from the show. Riley and Ellie dance around to Etta James's 1968 song, I Got You Babe, which kind of signals the huge hole that's about to be left in Ellie's life since, according to Frank's musical code, 60s music translates as nothing in. But the girl's moment is interrupted by the infected dude that spent the last month growing into the wall in the bathroom by the hot dog on a stick. Probably the least gross thing growing in that bathroom, by the way. Again, this is a change from the game, where instead of one lone infected, it's an entire horde that descends on Riley and Ellie, triggering a big old chase scene. They hear him Kool-Aid Man his way into the horror shop, and Riley takes several shots at him, and Ellie stabs him a bunch in the gut until Riley beats him over the head with something and gets his attention before Ellie eventually stabs him in the skull, putting him down for good. But of course, when the action is over, they are both bitten, just like in the game. Also, like in the game, Ellie starts looking around through a bunch of drawers, desperately trying to find something that she can combine with something else to save her friend. And really, people give this show a lot of credit for how faithful it is to the source material, but I think they kind of skimped on how much time Ellie spends looking through drawers. I mean, come on, that game is half looking through drawers. You hold down triangle, you find half a pair of scissors, you combine it with rubbing alcohol. How would that even work? Anyway, I digress. Ellie's unsuccessful and she breaks a bunch of stuff in her rage, and then once again, this exchange between her and Riley plays out very much the way it unfolds in the game.
The way I see it, we got two options. One, we take the easy way out. Option two, we just keep going. We could just be all poetic and shit and lose our minds together.
The two girls hang on to each other, their goodbye now something that is completely out of their hands. Another tragic detail though, in episode 4, Ellie told Joel that she had killed before, and she could have been referring to that one infected guy she stabbed in the head who was trapped under a pile of rubble, but she could also be referring to Riley after she turned, because really, shirking that responsibility to somebody else doesn't really seem like Ellie's style. So our theory here is that Ellie's first love was also her first kill, which is pretty sad. And that's where the flashback abruptly ends, and we're instantly brought back to the abandoned house with Ellie desperately going through more drawers looking for crafting components so she can craft health kits for Joel, presumably. I'm glad they added more drawer rummaging. Drawer rummaging is a huge part of The Last of Us. Anyway, Joel's still alive, Ellie sews him up. He needs antibiotics to stave off that infection because that's the kind of thing that tends to happen when you do home surgery. And if you know the games, you know where those antibiotics are gonna come from. But that's next week. For now, Ellie doesn't know what she's doing, but she's doing all she can to save that one last important friend in her life. But what did you think of episode 6 and how it handled the Left Behind DLC? Did you catch any other major differences between the game and the show? And do you think there's enough time spent in this show rooting around in drawers, looking for masking tape and scissors and nails and all that stuff? Let us know in the comments down below. As always, thank you for watching this episode of Canon Fodder. I'm Max Scoville, and for more fungal zombie apocalypse stuff, check out the game to show comparison for episode 5, which is the Henry and Sam episode. Then again, maybe you don't want to relive that all over again. Either way, don't forget to follow and subscribe to IGN wherever you like to watch. We'll see you next time.